Hi, and welcome to the Afghanistan Project Podcast. I'm your host, Beth Bailey, and my guest today is Alison Tabor, a supervising attorney with Resettlement Action DC and a principal attorney with AGT LAW PLLC. And Alison, you're a familiar face here. You were on just, was it 2 months ago, a month ago now, talking about, right? I know it's all been very crazy, but we were talking about the legal precautions that Afghans should take just to make sure that they are ready for anything in the United States, following several executive orders after January 20th. And now you're here to provide some updates so that Afghans can continue to have the information they need to thrive in the United States. And I'm really glad to have you back. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me again.
Oh, it's an honor. I know you want to make sure everybody is fully understanding what the limits of your advice are. So please go ahead and describe that so that we're all covered in the disclaimer regard.
So everything I'm saying today is very general advice. It's not legal advice specific to anyone's case. And so anyone with pending immigration applications needs to talk to their own attorney about the facts of their case.
Absolutely. And I'm going to imagine one of the things that we talked about last episode was how difficult it is to find an attorney now. I mean, it's, immigration attorneys are overtaxed in their caseloads, it sounds like. Does that continue to be the case?
Yeah, and even more now. It takes a lot of time just to try and stay informed and updated in all of the changes, and just be patient with your attorneys. We're doing the best we can.
Sure. So if you say go a couple days without hearing back from your attorney, don't assume that they've just forgotten about you.
They haven't forgotten. They're not ignoring you. It's okay to send a friendly reminder text or email that you'd like to talk. But we're just very busy, and it's just going to take some extra time to get back to people.
Absolutely. That makes perfect sense to me. But of course, I can understand both sides, the kind of desperation that is motivating a lot of these cases right now. So it is a really difficult time, but you have recently been watching some changes in the way that green cards are being issued. So I would love for you to open up with that and kind of explain what's happening so that Afghans can understand that big change.
Yeah, so it was recently announced that USCIS is putting a pause on the processing of green card applications for asylees, refugees, and it's also priced to SID. So it's a pause in issuing a decision, but they're still accepting applications and they are still conducting interviews. We don't know how long the pause is going to be. USCIS is waiting for further direction. What we do know is that they are going to do increased vetting on applications, and we don't know exactly what that means. I expect that part of that vetting is going to be looking at social media profiles, because we know that they've said that on future green card applications, they're going to request people put the URLs, the information of their social media accounts so they can be checked. Mm-hmm. So I suspect that's part of what's going on. There may be other things they're looking at as well. And we have no idea how long to expect the pause. It could be 1 month, it could be 3 months, it could be a year, we hope not. But they are still accepting the applications, and by filing the application, especially for refugees who are required to file their green card applications a year after they arrive, so people can still go ahead and get those applications in, so they're in the queue, in the list for their application to be adjudicated when it can be.
Okay. Does that mean, because we talked before about what papers, for instance, Afghans should be carrying with them. I mean, should they be carrying a copy of those forms so that they can prove that they've done what they need to do on their end? What does this change for how Afghans should go about their daily lives and make sure that they're not going to be, detained?
I don't know that it's necessary to carry a green card application around. It'd be more important to show, I guess for SIDs, if they had a receipt showing that they'd submitted the green card application, the I-45, that would be good. Asylees and refugees should carry something with them that shows that they have that status. But as far as taking steps to ensure that their applications will be granted, I think it would be a good idea to be very mindful and careful about what people are posting on social media. Being mindful of the way things can be interpreted. And although we have freedom of speech in this country, some issues are more contentious than others. And just being very careful, not that anyone's doing this, but of course never advocating for any type of violence. That would be something that they would be looking for, seeing that in social media. So just being very careful about comments, shares, likes.
Sure. That makes perfectly good sense to share. What about, when we talked before, you had talked about how, if you've got, I think you had said if you have asylum status or a green card, nothing to worry about. What about refugee status? Is that also something that you don't have any need to worry?
So though asylum status and refugee status are permanent statuses.
Okay.
Refugees are required to apply for a green card after they've been present for a year. They can't keep that status forever. Asylees can keep asylee status. They are not required to file a green card application.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Gosh, it's all so... just when I think I understand all of these various programs, I find that I have my knowledge just goes to the tidal pool level versus the oceanic Mariana Trench level. So it's really good to be humbled and reminded that there's a lot of ways to come to this country, and they all have different specifics. What other changes have you seen? I mean, are you hearing about Afghans being deported? I know that early days, there was the group of Afghans who were taken to, was it Panama, the hotel? Do you have any updates on anything in that regard?
I'm sorry, I don't. I knew some people who were connected. I was trying to get in touch with people that had been sent to possibly El Salvador and to Panama. We know Afghans were sent there. I was trying to see how I could help, but it was people who knew somebody who knew somebody, and so I wasn't able to connect with anyone. And I haven't seen any recent news updates either.
Sure. I think the one, I won't call it happy. The one piece of positive news that I saw from that is that those people are not being put back in Afghanistan, right? It's not like the Afghans in Pakistan who are going to be physically deported right back to Torkham and probably handed right to the Taliban border police. As one Afghan who just escaped Pakistani custody in December told me was going to happen to him if he didn't get that. That was I don't know if you heard about that case, Alison. I wrote about it for Reason, but it was the only USRAP case to come here after the ban because that man got a global boarding letter. That was what, to get the man out of Pakistani prison, his wife was a USRAP applicant, and she had been a prosecutor in Afghanistan. And so her husband was a journalist. He was arrested by the Pakistani police, put in prison with a bunch of other Afghans who had, many of them had pathways to European countries. And they were all detained together. The Pakistani police said, yeah, you're out of here. But state, because of his wife's affiliation, issued a global boarding letter to him that got him out of prison in December. And they were planning on being on a flight. But then the executive orders hit. They couldn't get out in time. And then when IRAP's case came through and the injunction was ordered to restart USRAP, they said, we're doing this thing. They used the boarding letter. Pakistan let them get on the plane. They went to Seattle because they figured, okay, that's the place where the injunction is currently in place. They let them land in Seattle, and then now they're here. They're in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. It was right. They're completely incredible, and I just, I think it's good to know that IRAP does incredible work, right? And just even if it's just one family so far that has been helped, that's one whole family. That's 4 whole lives that they saved. So anyway, there are good news stories. There are things that are, at least right now, not being done. Afghans aren't being put back into Taliban hands. So I don't know. It's like you have to look for the small moments of good in the midst of the darkness that's going on right now. What else do you think that listeners should know, Afghan listeners now, that has changed since the last time you and I spoke?
Well, so unfortunately, we're hearing that some SIV green cards are being revoked. At least a couple of hundred so far. It sounds like there will be more that are going to be revoked coming soon, which is really unfortunate and really scary. As far as I have heard, the green cards that are being revoked have tended to come from 2 companies, people that worked for Global Tech and for ANHAM. So those SIV people are getting letters from USCIS telling them that their green cards are going to be revoked, and they have a very short period of time to respond and argue why their green cards, they should keep their green cards. So it's very important that people, if they move, update their address with USCIS so that they get these type of notifications. And if anyone does get one of these letters, they need to find an attorney right away that can help respond to that. The reasons I've heard being given are, one, that the documentation is improper, that something's missing from the HR letter, and they need more information. So it may be possible to get more information. The other reason is they are saying that for some of these that there's some type of fraud or misrepresentation involved, that people paid to get letters that they weren't entitled to. And they haven't released any of those numbers, so we don't know how many they're saying that's the case and how many they're saying that the documentation just is lacking something.
Does state typically release those numbers to... I mean, I've never been able to get state to release that kind of information to me.
I think SIV green cards being revoked is a brand new thing, as far as I know.
Yeah.
Brand new thing. So there's no precedent for this.
What does that mean? So, somebody loses their... okay, I want to make sure I ask 2 questions. The first one is, what does it mean for somebody who goes from green card and safety to now no status? And the next is, do other Afghans with green cards have to worry about this? Or is this something that really is pinpointed and they can kind of feel like they don't need to be constantly looking over their shoulder?
So I'll address your second question first. I wish I could be more encouraging. The truth is we don't know what it means. We don't know what allegations might come out, what additional companies might be involved in. People can't live their lives in fear, though. People have to go on living their lives. I believe that people who receive this letter and their green cards are being revoked. It doesn't specifically explain what's going to happen. What I think will happen is that they will be referred to the immigration court, and so then they would have a chance to go in front of a judge to produce evidence, to have an attorney explain the situation, and if they, a lot of these guys have asylum and the SIV, but chose to apply for the green card based on the SIV, but also have asylum.
Okay.
And so I can't say 100%, but most likely they are still safe with that asylum status. Now, there are certain circumstances asylum could be revoked, but that's far less likely.
Okay.
And for someone who doesn't already have asylum, if they get one of these letters, the first call should be to an attorney to talk about addressing the letter, and then also discussing with that attorney whether it'd be a good idea to apply for asylum at that point.
Sure. Yeah. I like your advice, also the basic thing of update your information. Make sure you're getting this information, because the last thing you'd want is to miss it. And if everything's updated and you're not getting a letter, good. I can say with confidence, I have spoken with numerous global tech employees, most of whom have shown me pictures of their work, and documents. And I do know also that some global tech letters from people who help with these cases, they have said those letters have been copied, and I will always say, if you come into this country and commit fraud, they've already gone after Americans who have written false LORs for people and made money off of it, and that's important. That's good. It shows that that's being done. But I've always said Global Tech and ANHAM, I've talked to Bo Lendman of ANHAM so many times about his incredibly assiduous work helping all of the people who worked for that giant contracting company. And here's the thing that Bo will say too, is every time, and he said it on the record, that's why I feel comfortable saying this now, is I have written about it. It's not like this is all, in confidence between him and me. Every time that they get a letter, he had to say, yep, this is right. This is from somebody we know. And anytime it wasn't, they'd say, no, we're not supporting that application. So, you had Bo making sure that everything was legit. I don't think Bo is trying to perpetrate any kind of fraud. I don't know exactly what happened at Global Tech, but like I said, the people that I have spoken with have shown me their pictures of working with American forces, and I haven't had any reason to disbelieve them. But if there is fraud, that's the job of ASIV, is to find that and make sure that, but if you're not...
if you lie to the U.S. government, they're probably going to find out, and there's going to be consequences for that. But knowing the situation that people face in Afghanistan, and I can understand people feeling like they have no other way, they have no other path. And there's a lot of people in danger. And a lot of people that felt like they had to do some things they wouldn't normally do to save themselves, to save their families.
Absolutely. I mean, we've seen that happen in other incredibly difficult periods. And we've seen what the Taliban have done. I mean, they are the most mendacious group of humans that was ever to exist. And the way that they have treated women and then proceeded to tell the world that, well, it's our country and we can do what we want. You don't get to interfere in our affairs. And, and then they kill our allies or anyone that they don't like and say that they're not. That's even part of the Doha Agreement. I was rereading the Doha Agreement the other day, and that's part of it is you're not, you're going to let people apply for asylum inside your country and have safety. And they haven't done that. They haven't done most of the things they said they would do. And so, of course, people were terrified. I mean, I had a young man who just blew me away with some of the things he was telling me about growing up inside of Afghanistan. He's at Texas Tech now he's on a presidential scholarship there. He's so smart, but he was talking about watching the people grabbing onto the planes. And he said that when he was living in Turkey at the time, and the Turkish people were making fun of the Afghans who were doing that. And he said, no, I can understand it because I grew up there. And you just had to get out because you knew what was coming, you're absolutely right, Allison, that it is not a place that anybody would want to live. And of course, I can understand why people would do that. And I still firmly support, why fraudulent things have to be looked into. Like none of this needed to have happened. In my estimation, still, the fact that the Taliban gets to control that country and make people fear for their lives, it boggles my mind that we let that happen. Okay. Allison, I've got questions from Afghans. They are desperate to have answered. And I think that you've answered some of them kind of in various ways, and some of them might be beyond what you feel comfortable answering. And I am going to issue once again the disclaimer for this portion again that none of this is legal advice from you. You need a lawyer to help you with this. But the first question is from an Afghan who says their asylum was approved in March of 2024, the end of March. After approval, I obtained my SIV documents and applied for SIV. Fortunately, my SIV-COM was approved 2 weeks ago. At the same time, I applied for my green card through my asylum case, completed my biometrics, and am now waiting for approval. My question is, can I apply for a green card through my new SIV case while my other case is still pending? Will there be any issue with having two I-485 AOS applications at the same time?
Yeah, so in general, there's no problem applying for a green card based on SIV and applying for a green card based on asylum. And for people who are in the United States with asylum, so they earn the SIV, right? It was promised to them, they earned it. I can understand feeling a source of pride and your green card having SQ6 on it saying that you're SIV, but there's a very limited number of visas left.
Yeah. Less
than 10,000. Congress has not authorized any more at this time. So for every SIV visa issued in the United States to an asylee who has another pathway, that means someone in Afghanistan doesn't get one. I don't want to make people feel guilty. They should do, what's best for them in consultation with their attorneys. But just, I think that's something people really don't know and should be aware of.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. And I have been harping on the fact that the number of available SIVs is going down. So I think that's a really important point to make. This individual also had another case, which seems more like a comment. And I will ask it just in case you have some information. He said, additionally, I need some help with family reunification. I applied for an I-730 for my wife and children who are still in Afghanistan. It has been 11 and a half months, and my family's I-730 is still pending with USCIS. It is taking too long. I agree. It's taking too long for everyone. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So I know it's so long. it's so long, and all the people who have been here 3.5 years, missing their families, my heart breaks for them. I know that must be so difficult. Just to put it in perspective, we saw some I-730s early on go through the process pretty quickly. But in general, for other immigrant populations, it is a 3-year process, a 4-year process. And in other populations, they were waiting to have asylum interviews for 5 years, 6 years, or longer, and then filing the I-730s after that. So just a little bit of perspective on that, but yes, it's too long, of course, any time away from family. So once a case is considered outside the normal processing time, which you can go to, I'll have to think of what it is, the USCIS website, to look at case processing times. And you can put in your type of application, and it will show on there what's considered the average processing time for a case. If it's beyond that, then someone can call USCIS and ask for a case status report, and so then they'll get back to you in some time, and just tell you what stage it's at. Again, this is another example where it's really important to make sure your address is updated, so that if there's a request for evidence, an RFE, that you're receiving that, so that you can respond with whatever additional documents they need. Yeah, I know it's hard.
Yeah. I think that's so important what you said about the wait. I never thought about that when I got started on this, how long refugees often have to wait, or, anyone who's trying to flee a country or go to a safe place. It's not an easy process. And you would think that it would be. I believed that it would be. I believed the processing times that we told Afghans, 9 months for SIV, 12 to 18 for USRAP, Mm-hmm. And it has been really hard just to watch them suffer. So this all could have been done, but
that's one of my frustrations with the pause on the green cards as well, because SIVs are probably one of the most vetted groups. They've got to go through background checks before they ever get the job that qualified them to apply for SIV. There's various application stages to go through with different security checks. Asylees are vetted before they can get asylum decisions. Refugees are vetted, sometimes for years, in third countries before they come. So there's already a lot of vetting.
Yeah.
It's a lot of red tape for all of the processes.
Yep. It's such a... It's a hard time right now. I'll move on to letter number 2. I don't know that you'll be able to answer this. It was a question I was not able to think of an answer to. How many Afghans have you come across with a facilitation letter issued by Canada that state that the holder is a Canadian citizen?
I have not come across any.
Okay.
I don't know Canadian immigration law, so I'm not familiar with that at all. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that was one I didn't know, but I thought it was worth asking. Definitely will keep that in rotation to see if I can find somebody who can answer. It definitely was not going to be me. Number 3, is there any expiration date for overseas USRAP approved cases who are waiting to travel to the U.S. before the suspension?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't believe it expires, but I can't be quoted on that. I'm not certain. Hopefully processing will resume.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping too. And all those people who had tickets in hand will be like that lovely group that was able to get out, and they will resume that processing like they have been ordered to do. The last question, and I brought this one up with you before we started recording, but just for listeners who didn't get to hear that part, an Afghan reached out to me. His brother had been trying to do things the right way through the CBP One app, get across the border, get your appointment, claim asylum, and couldn't get an appointment on CBP One, and was waiting for the opportunity. And then the executive orders hit. There was no more CBP One app. And I think that the situation in Mexico became so violent that he decided that it wasn't safe there either. And he fled and came to the U.S. and pretty immediately found himself in an ICE facility. And I know, I told you before we started that a lawyer had been procured, which was my first point. Like, do you have a lawyer? And yes, and then they made a credible fear statement, which I think is the right path. But I would love for you, Allison, to talk about, the path and the outlook for people who do this. And I think, importantly, I'll just say, please don't do that. I understand completely how desperate that situation is. I totally understand how dangerous it can be in Mexico. My heart breaks for people who have made that decision, who went to Brazil and didn't foresee this happening. But I just, right now, my thought would be, don't come into this country undocumented or at all, in a way that isn't going to be well received, because we don't know what's happening. We don't know where Afghans are being, if they're being sent to different places. So please, Allison, let me stop babbling, and you probably have a much better answer than I do.
Yeah, like you said, don't come right now. There is not a legal pathway to apply for asylum at the southern border at this time, and it may be that way for years. We don't know. I mean, there's lawsuits, but we don't know what's going to happen. People who do come across the border risk, like the person you're talking about, risk being put in detention and not being able to get out, risk being put in expedited removal proceedings. We don't know all the details about the Afghans that were sent to Panama. And those flights like that are paused right now because of lawsuits, but that doesn't mean that they couldn't resume. So whatever fears and frustration somebody may be facing in another third country, they're not going to fare much better, have a better situation trying to come into the United States right now.
Yeah. Yep. And this individual had faced incredible threat in the U.S. from what I was, or I'm sorry, not the U.S., in Afghanistan from what I was told. And so obviously returning there was not going to be an appropriate path either. And so it's between a rock and a hard place, but I think that the hardest place is going to be Afghanistan. So if you can find a place that isn't that hard, stay there. Try to find as much normalcy as you can. Or find a path to a different place, maybe. I have a lovely friend, Amy Sins, who has been trying to rack her brain thinking of, okay, so these pathways are closed, these ones are closed. What things can we do? What visa pathways are open to, say, scholars, or, what countries. So I want to bring her on in a little bit to do that too, to kind of brainstorm what are pathways, what are things that we can have hope for right now. It's hard to find those moments of hope, and that story really just hit me right in the chest. You escaped this dangerous place, went to another dangerous place, came to a place where I think of as a free place, and found yourself not free. But you have to do it. It's a very hard, there is no right answer. There's no good answer right now. Well, Allison, is there anything else that you think we should talk about, that you want to bring up for Afghans or just in general before we sign out here?
I guess I'll just say it's a scary time. There's a lot of confusion. I still have faith in this country. And even though things look really dark right now, I hope and pray it's not going to stay that way. And people just need to keep living their lives, enjoy your friends, enjoy your family, continue your education, and just keep building your life in the United States.
Yeah, I think I want to piggyback on that and just say, you brought up earlier that, social media is being monitored, and I know the desperation that's in the Afghan community right now. But I think it's really important to try to find the hope. I struggled with it so much in the first weeks after this. It was the travel ban, it knocked me flat. So many things just knocked me flat. And then I realized as time passed that more people were speaking out from both sides of the aisle about how important it is to stand with our allies. That gave me hope. More people are figuring out how to work within the confines of this new system, figuring out things, legal fights against, every day there is a new facet to this. And it just, everything happened all at once, and it felt so, you couldn't ever get a win. There can be wins. I think that there are so many people who really do care about this, but there's just been so much all at once that we have to remind people of the stories of our allies, why they qualify for USRAP, why they qualify for SIV, what they are fleeing from, how terrible the Taliban is. I do think that the Trump administration knows that. I really do. But yeah, I think that there can be hope, and getting down and letting ourselves just think about the darkness isn't going to help us at all. In fact, it could lead to, well, we don't want you in this country because you clearly don't like the U.S. Why are you saying that the U.S. is terrible online, or that, I think we have to fight against the darkness with hope, and with sharing our stories, and just reminding people of their better nature right now. So thank you so much, Allison. It was really important to have you on and give those updates, and just keep as much information as possible in people's access right now.
Thank you for having me again.
Absolutely. And hopefully maybe next time there will be better news. Wouldn't that be nice? We'll just cross everything. I'm going to cross everything. Well, I want to put out the call to Afghan listeners. We're always looking to tell your stories. Please share anything you want to have read out on this podcast with the Afghanistan Project Podcast at gmail.com. And thank you, everyone, for sharing your time, for supporting the people of Afghanistan. Tasha Kaur, hope to see you again soon.